Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ZJLF at the British Library Knowledge Centre Theatre. We are delighted to introduce An Unsuitable Boy with Karan Johar and Rachel Dwyer. No flash photography is permitted in the venue, please, and please ensure that your phones are on silent. Thank you.
So, Karan, this is really a very odd event to do for me in many ways, reading this book. I don't know Karan hugely well, but I met him a long time ago when he was just about to release a film. He was very worried if it was going to work, and the film was Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. And I remember you being terribly nervous about it then.
Oh, you bought that. No, I was. There was a lot at stake at that time. It was my first film. I was all of 25 years old and I had the audacity to spend all my father's money, which he actually had a tough time raising. It was difficult because, you know, it had a cast. It had Shah Rukh and Kajol who were coming post Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, and of course there were expectations, and actually nobody knew who I was and where I came from. My father was of course a celebrated film producer and very loved, but he had given a string of films that hadn't worked at the box office. So of course there was the daunting fear of failure, that what I would do to my own company, to my father's expectations, my own expectations, and of course the cast that had invested tremendously in me. So yes, I was very nervous. And then there was an underworld threat at that time that didn't make life very easy. In fact, I think my mother looked at me, I remember, and she said, "Oh, I hope this film flops. We don't want all these people to call us." So I was like, how can you say that? That's your son's career. She says, "We're a very happy middle-class family. We don't want these people to call us again. I don't know if I want this film to work." And actually, I have to say, I saw the film we ran away, you know, after the film's premiere because we were advised to stay out of the country. And I saw the film again at Marble Arch. You know, at that time, Marble Arch, the Odeon Marble Arch, had just one screen. It was a sprawling 500-seater. And the interval happened. We were sitting very quietly in our seats. And there were about 400 or 300 of them got up and rushed out. And I think my mother was semi-happy because she said, "Oh, they're not liking it. They're leaving." So then my mother and my father and I, who was very upset about why people had got off their seats. And those days, they did break for interval, even though it was, you know, the overseas market, which doesn't happen. And they were all standing outside, you know, the washrooms. And I think it was the mascara that was running because the interval point had made them cry. And my father was very proud at that time. He kept tapping people and saying, "This is my son. He made this film." And everyone turned around saying, "No, he didn't. Yash Chopra made this film." He was like, "No, my son made this film." No one believed me then. I think they just about believe me now.
Yes, I think the confusion between the various Yash uncles at times of film releases was confusing. And I thought that was when you had that note in your book about everybody has a Yash Johar story. And
yes.
If I remember going on the duplicate launch with him around London, with him and Shah Rukh in the days when the film industry was very different. And also for me, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai is very special because it released on my birthday. So Avatar organised a Yash Raj cake for me. So my little bit in Karan's story soon to come to an end as Karan catapults from Kuch Kuch Hota Hai forwards. And one of the things that I thought was fascinating in your book was how much time you gave to the three films, I mean, the three earlier films, that seemed to be in a way the defining Karan Johar films. Now, if people talk about a Karan Johar film, those are the films, aren't they?
Pretty much that became the syntax of New Age cinema at that time. You know, it began with Aditya Chopra's Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge that actually created, you know, this kind of lover on celluloid that was an aspirational lover, a great son, a model husband or a model, you know, family member, and everyone felt a part of Shah Rukh Khan's ethos, his DNA, just the way he was. You know, you felt engulfed into that world. So I think that New Age cinema that started with Dilwale then was taken a stage ahead in Dil To Pagal in 97, Kuch Kuch Hota in 98, and then Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum in 2001, and then Kal Ho Na Ho in 2003. It pretty much was that trajectory that kind of defined a certain kind of, you know, way of being. It was also the time where I felt there was a certain abandon, a certain consumerism with the economy that actually created Shah Rukh Khan's mania. You know, it's always actually, if you, the superstar's rise is always a reflection of the economic times of our country, or the mood of our country, whether it was the angry young man that was born in the 70s as a result of the repression, or the consumerism that created Shah Rukh Khan. We were fortunate to be part of that era. era, and we did a lot to kind of, create that new age. And then we realized, or at least I realized, that that times are now going to start changing. And we saw an indication of that in 2001, where in one particular year you had Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, Lagan, Dil Chahta Hai, Chandni Bar, and Gaddar. It was possibly the biggest year that Indian cinema has seen. And I really saw it at the beginning of the year, and it was my unfounded arrogance. It wasn't even arrogance, it was just delusion, I think. I thought that, why are the other films even releasing that year? I'm like, look at, there's one man in a dhoti playing cricket. I mean, who's going to watch that? I knew Farhan Akhtar as a kid, and he was pretty much like the protagonist of Wake Up Sid, like kind of somebody who had no direction, And I said, what is he going to make? He's making this kind of indie art house kind of new age. And Chandni Bar, I hadn't heard of Gaddar. Sunny Deol hadn't done something spectacular in a while. So I thought that I was going to sweep the awards, be like on top of and people would just like bow down in respect to my cinema. The exact opposite happened. Because when I saw Lagan, I realized that was what you call proud cinema. When I saw Dil Chahta Hai, I thought that redefined cool. Gaddar's box office shook up India. And by the time it was my turn in December, the end of the year, I was old wine in a new bottle. I wept at least 5 times in that week reading the reviews, because everyone would say the most nasty things about my poor little large film. And everyone said, oh, we've seen this. It's a family film. It's just a family film. I don't know why you call it just a family film, whereas I had felt I had invested all my emotions into that product. It was just amounting to nothing when I wrote about it. Of course, the film went on to do well, but I was scarred that year because, ironically, the biggest success of the company gave me the maximum amount of disappointment at its release because it was constantly, I had to kind of scream out loud and say, do you know my film is double the business of Lagan? And they would say, and they would give me like a not believing look at all. Like, really? Bigger than Lagan? No. Really? And I was like, yes. But Lagan was just the most celebrated film, and rightfully so. It was a far superior film to mine in terms of its direction, in terms of its cinema. It's just in every department, it was a far superior product. But that's where I realized 2 things, that you can't be deluded, because delusion is a disease that you should not have, because there is really no cure for it. And second, you've got to be aware. You've got to be aware of when you are not doing something that is of a certain quality. And you've got to the only way you can be brilliant is if you acknowledge brilliance.
No, and I think in a way K3G perhaps almost brought to the end a certain era of Bollywood, perhaps. I mean, well, when Bollywood itself appeared, because you couldn't get more Bollywood than that. There was nowhere for it to get any bigger.
It was a bit of a over-the-top, out-there family saga. And it was 20% of it was showing off, which I have to admit. There was 80% of it that I felt, 20% I was showing off. And I think that showing off always gets caught, some way or the other.
But after that, working on Kal Ho Na Ho, when I was reading about that in the book, I'm a friend of Nikhil's, and it's saying about, that you felt almost like you didn't want to direct after that you didn't really know where to go.
Which is why, because I kept thinking, when everyone said Farhan Akhtar represents New Age cool, his syntax is original, I just felt that, I had the ability to make something younger and more contemporary in terms of its narrative, which is where I wrote Kal Ho Na Ho. But I think initially I was just too wary of directing it because I was like, am I not cool enough anymore? Though Shah Rukh may have worn the cool chain in Kuch Kuch Hota Hai.
I've got one of them, but I couldn't find it for today.
Which is ironically the most uncool thing to have, is to say something that is cool. You don't say cool for something that's cool. At that time it seemed okay. But today in hindsight I'm like, no, maybe not. But yeah, so Kal Ho Na Ho was worrisome for me. And then I wrote it as I can remember watching Amelie in London, and I loved the narrative. And somewhere Kal Ho Na Ho was born as a result of that film, because it inspired me to tell a story in a different way. Split screens, new age storytelling. I had written the end very differently in Kal Ho Na Ho. I had written the end just like he comes into the narrative, he leaves without any drama. But my father was like, he's a superstar, you've got to show him die. If you want to show him, you've got to show Shah Rukh Khan die, you've got to give them bang for the buck. You kill a superstar, you've got to show him 20 minutes, you've got to make an audience weep. And I'm like, but that'll make it melodramatic. He said, who asked you to spend all this money? You're going to spend this money? What do you mean? Ye to bada French film ho gaya na? He said, aise aa gaya, aise hi chala gaya. So I said, I don't know why my father thought everything that was off the beaten road was French. For some reason, that's what he thought. So he was like, ये तो बड़ा ये कैसा है? शाहरुख खान मर रहा है, मैं उसको देखना चाहता हूँ मरते हुए. I want to see him die. So I was like, but that's very dramatic. There'll be a wedding. He'll sacrifice. You want a hospital scene. He said he must die, and you must make. And he said, ladies, audience must cry. And I was like, he said, my father had this old school way of putting the most efficient thoughts in boxes. Like he used to say these things, and I would be like, okay, I'll have to do this. So we made Shah Rukh Khan die. It took him 20 minutes, and like, and if you ask me, those are the 20 worst minutes of that film. I mean, of course, look, people love that film, and I like it. I'm so proud of it, and all that put aside. But you've got to know what's not right with it. When you see the film, I'm like, dude, like, go, it's over, like it's done. Like, why are you going on and on? But that's the way. And Shah Rukh told me, he said, yaar, ye kuch zyada nahi ho raha. You know, he's like, abhi shaadi pe I'm crying, then wed pe I'm crying, and then the end that she's crying. And I was like, yeah, my father said you got to make ladies audience cry. So I was like, okay, so be it. And like, he said it very in his typical strong Punjabi way. He said, you cry and you will go laughing to the bank. I said, okay. So we went laughing to the bank.
I saw that film in northwest London, and I remember everybody crying, but there was one moment it all went very quiet. It was just before the song Mahi Ve, because this was a fully Gujarati part of London.
Yeah, oh, the GUJJU. Yeah. Okay.
Very quiet, but...
I've gone quiet myself.
But then after that, I mean, saying that you'd taken Bollywood to an extreme, you took Bollywood to another extreme. I mean, really with Kabhi Alvida, I mean, that was really quite a shock, I think, that film, to many people.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, people have adultery in India.
I'm like, I'll tell you where I thought that I was done, signed, sealed, and absolutely delivered. Was when there was a preview of Kabhi Alvida, and I thought we were like breaking ground, and like Aditya Chopra had called me and said, you mustn't make the two of them kind of consummate their love because it has to be sacrificial. It cannot be, carnal. It has to be like whatever. So I was like, no, we've got to push the envelope. He said, but you're tearing the envelope. And I was like, I don't know. I'm going to do it. Then I remember we had a first preview screening for Kabhi Alvida. It released on Friday, the 11th of August, but there was a preview screening on the 10th of August at IMAX, I'll never forget. And I was watching it very silently, and there was the moment where Shah Rukh and Rani check into the hotel to do the obvious. And there was a very traditional lady who was watching it with a very traditional man, husband and wife, and she turned in shock to him. Like, how could this be happening? And he looked at her very nonchalantly and said, dream sequence hai. She was like, she got respite in that. Then 3 minutes into the fact it was not a dream sequence, again she looked angrily at him, accusingly, as in like, how dare you bring me to this film that is doing my brushed of my religion and my morality. And he just got up and left. And she walked behind him, and that was it. And I realized, and then when I stood outside, there was a lady, a young girl who was crying against a pillar. And her mother came and tapped me very harshly. And I thought, oh, here comes a compliment. And she screamed at me. She said, my daughter's going through a divorce. And I said, chalo, aaj tera mood badalte hain. I'll change your mood. I'll show you a Karan Johar film. And she said, ye banaya? And she looked at me, and with that drama, she said, sharm aani chahiye tumhe. And I was like, dude, like I was told, how can you endorse infidelity? I said, how can you endorse? Why? There's no point. There's no point saying that, because I can't endorse something that's already sold out. It exists. It's in everyone's life. You brush it under the carpet, and nobody. And I had a couple tell me, look, what do you want us to say? We can't go to the movie, see this film, and say we liked it, because then each other will ask each other, why did you like it? And like there is no answer to that, because you can't. So he says, we can all like it in solitude, but you can't like it as a couple. And you certainly can't like it as a family, because the elders don't want you to like this film. So I realized that we brush so many things under the carpet. And when you put that out there, it's questioning your morality that in any case you're actually a victim of, but you don't want to address. So I realized that whatever the film, and people told me it did really well overseas because people see films alone here. They don't need to go in a family unit like they do in India. So everyone who was doing their bit went and saw the film on their own. I think that's why I did the numbers here. But it's something that I will always remember, that the deep polarized responses came because of all these issues that surrounded the film.
But I think one of the things that made the film, for me, I mean, really striking, was the fact that Abhishek was such a nice guy, but she just didn't love him. And Shah Rukh was pretty horrible in the film.
No, I mean, he was not. He was bitter, and he was insecure, and he was complexed, and that can be sexy. And sometimes straight-laced, good, doing the right thing may not be. And I don't understand. There were so many people who said, why didn't Rani love Abhishek? And I'm like, there is no answer to that question. Why not is my answer to that. Because sometimes isn't passion a prerequisite? And it certainly is not, doesn't seem to be where it comes, oh, he doesn't beat her, he doesn't cheat on her, he's good to her, so she must love him and lust him. I mean, that's not the reality of our times. Sometimes love or attraction, all of these things are like something that you either feel organically or you don't. And I don't understand why people question some things that don't have any answers. It's just a feeling. You never question an emotion. It's not possible. It comes from within you. So that's what I felt. And Shah Rukh was going through his beats, but sometimes that attitude can be attractive. And there have been cases that, bitter, cynical people have found love. And that's what I thought I was trying to represent. But I got so much of, but why? He's such a good husband, but why? I'm like... Okay. So had he given her 2 whacks, she would have been, I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, it's like, or she should have bashed him up because of whatever. Like, it was ridiculous. I don't understand that. I found there was a lot of hypocrisy in the reactions.
But it took you on to My Name is Khan, which was something completely different for you. Is this a Karan Johar film?
It's not actually. It's the only film that I was externally directing, because it was internally it was difficult for me to identify with the material. It was a film that I feel maybe Mani Ratnam would have done even a better job, or any other filmmaker who was more comfortable with that kind of storytelling. But I took it on as a challenge. It was a film that I wanted to tell. I wanted to be out. It's the only film, that tonality of that film is very different from everything else I've ever directed. And I wanted to be uncomfortable. I needed to be uncomfortable. At that point of time in my life, I felt that I needed to put myself in a zone that didn't come easily to me, either through character, narrative, storytelling, or even the beats, the political beats of the film. I just felt I needed to kind of be outside my comfort zone, and I really enjoyed the experience. Say 15 minutes of the film, which again, I am not proud of, the whole hurricane portion, which I felt I didn't live up to. The rest of it, I think that we got okay.
And is it one that you like now in retrospect? You've become fonder of it now?
Of My Name is Khan? I saw about 20 minutes of it the other day, and I was like, oh my God, I directed this film, I can't recognize that. I somehow don't know what I was, and that's what happens with me a lot. When I look back at my material, I'm either cringing with embarrassment or surprised that I could achieve that, or don't identify with the innocence of that time or that moment. Somehow I think you can't constantly relate to the work you've done, because then it doesn't give you the opportunity to move on.
It got about 2 pages in the book, considerably less than the earlier films. So I was quite curious about that. And also, when you did Student of the Year, I mean, a film where you didn't work with Shah Rukh, a film where you didn't really talk much about what it was like working with Rishi in the film, which I was curious about, because we're all big Rishi Kapoor fans here,
I love Rishi Kapoor, and in fact, I'm a huge fan, and I've grown up wearing those, requesting my father to even buy me those sweaters that he used to wear, which he used to get from Marks and Spencer's and give them to me, because he rang up Yash uncle and asked him where those sweaters were available, because I used to throw tantrums about wanting the same printed sweaters, and I wore them in the heat of Mumbai, and I was that kind of a crazy fan. Working with him everyone's had different experiences with him. By his own admission, he said he tortured Shakun Batra during Kapoor and Sons. I had a great time. We had a very easy dynamic. The only first thing he said, you don't call me Chintu uncle, you call me Chintu ji. So I was like, he's saying, uncle, how could you call me? You're the director of those. You can't be saying uncle. So that was his major problem, that I shouldn't call him uncle and call him G or sir or whatever else. The other was like, he was like, I said, you're portraying a gay man. And he was like, I don't know how to do it. You tell me. I said, okay. And that was pretty much the easy dynamic. We had great fun.
And Re Dil Hai Mushkil, that's a very sad story. That's a really sad story.
Well, unrequited love is not sad, it's empowering. I think love is empowering. And I think that's exactly what I want to try to convey. I've been through those feelings. I've been through that feeling of unsatiated love and unrequited love. And I felt an entire narrative has never been made taking that emotion right through and not succumbing to a happy ending at all. There was again a polarized response about why I killed her, and I'm like, when that kind of love is not reciprocative love, you've got to kill the character. It's as simple as that. That's what I felt many times in my headspace. When I never got that love back, I would just wish they die. And so when you have the power of the pen, and when you're a filmmaker, you are God, right? You create characters, you destroy them. I created, I destroyed. That's my job. I gave her cancer. She should have loved him.
God, I hope I'm doing my job all right at the moment.
Let me tell you, Aedil Hai Mushkil is my most favorite film because it's the only honest piece of work without any calculations, any kind of... it may not be everyone's favorite film, but if you ask me, it's the film that I'm least embarrassed about. You know, there are no parts of the film that I would have changed. When I look at it, I watch it. It's not that I never feel proud of my work. I just feel satisfied that it's behind me and I'm trying to forge ahead. But it's the one film that was created within me and I executed exactly the way I'd imagined it. And I wouldn't change a beat of the film for anything. There was lots of internal discussion about, like, should it be a happy ending? Should she not die? Should she perhaps not love him but still remain? And I was like, there has to be some kind of closure. And this was the only closure that I could think of. But it is. You could look at it in two ways. You could look at it as a sad film or an exceptionally empowering film about the emotion of love. I look at it as the latter.
And in some ways, there doesn't seem to be a great transition between the sort of imagination people have of the person who directed these films and produced all these Dharma films. Coffee with Karan seems to be the same person. But I call it the AIB because we're being recorded. That was something that took me rather aback when I saw it. And even more so when I saw your mum sitting in the front row.
Yeah, it was, we talk about the roast a lot, and it started off as something to do something that was some violin in your face, which I knew it was. I knew what I was saying, I knew what was being said about me. I, of course, had no idea about what else was happening, which kind of took me aback, just like you when I was on that stage. Would I do it again? No. I've done it, so I possibly can't take it back. But I had told my mother not to come. I said, you know, it might be difficult for you. There will be things said that might embarrass you. And then she said that, I've seen you dance on national television. What gets worse? So she came. And I think it was really cool of her to sit in the front row and laugh even when her son was being, made fun of, to say the least. And I wouldn't do it again because of all the legal trouble that we got into. And I felt I put in, it's not for any other reason. I think, you know, those hours spent or days spent on dealing with those FIRs is not worth anyone's time. I have so many things to do, so many things to achieve, so many movies to make. I can't be sitting in courts fighting cases for things that have been said about me or things I've said about others in vain or, you know, in humor. And I realized that we don't tend to have a sense of humor about many things. And of course I realized that we pushed it a bit too much, especially the language on stage, which I wouldn't repeat. And some of the things that had deep sexual undertones that I don't think should be watched by a certain generation. Some of those are errors that I don't regret, but I will never repeat.
One of the things that struck me when I was reading the book, which, I mean, I enjoyed it enormously. You know, if you haven't got a copy of this book, do get it. You know, you think it's just going to be another of these sort of star books or something, but it's actually a fascinating book because I think it was the opening that really took me aback when there's a sort of partly an air of sadness about it, I think, given, you know, that everybody, and I'd certainly perceived you as this endlessly jolly, you know, always smartly dressed, going around, having a good time kind of person. In the book, you know, elements of sadness about the two things which you're perhaps most famous for in India, you know, teaching people about love and about the family. And to say that you had your deep regrets about those and how they hadn't necessarily gone right and how your private life had been complicated and, you know, how people might say to cheer you up, go to a Karan Johar film, but where do you go when you want cheering up? And talking about that and then your journey through it perhaps to the bit which is only just appears at the end, the becoming a father. And congratulations to Karan for the twins.
Yeah. Well, it's been a turbulent, it's been great. I have tremendous gratitude for everything that has come my way, be it through destiny or through good fortune, on some strong relationships down the road that have really helped translate my dreams onto celluloid and beyond. Great parenting, which I will always be grateful for. But there have been sad moments, there have been struggling moments. A lot of it I've spoken about in the book. There have been personal issues and that I've combated from my childhood onwards. There have also been a few, like lower self-esteem issues at one point that just became redundant at one point, and the work took over. And there were strong feelings of like sadness that even translated into a chemical imbalance, and there were anxiety and depression days which I had to kind of go. Mental health is something we tend to ignore, and I realized that it is a very important aspect of your existence, and if you have a problem, you've got to address it. Every other problem in your body you have a doctor for. It's just mental health we tend to kind of in the West, of course, it's much more accepted and much more dealt with. Back home in India, it's always brushed under the carpet, and I don't like that. That's why I spoke about it, and I know many else have. So when I went through those 2-3 years, I remember that I remember what I was feeling, and I remember that it was, and sometimes sadness and depression are two totally separate things. You could be sad but not go through depression as a disorder, as a mental disorder. You've got to have that diagnosed when you deal with it. So there was a lot of all that happening, and there was a feeling of emptiness and some amounts of loneliness. So it's the children, the decision to bring those children in my world was not just a selfish decision. It wasn't just because I felt there was a vacancy that needed to be occupied. There was an empty space in my life that needed to be filled. It was because I felt I had the ability to love. And I felt that the reserve of love was lying like there and not being leveraged and not being nurtured. And I knew that I could nurture that love and give that love. And that's why I wanted to have children. I knew it was a decision that may not be conventional. I knew it would go against the grain. I was worried about what my mother would feel, what people around. And those are like thoughts that definitely cross. But those are thoughts that you shouldn't have, because I think just giving yourself that burst of life, when you really feel the need to, you should take that decision. I encourage everyone out there, sitting here or beyond, that, if you feel, do not conform to convention, because that doesn't do anything for you, because all you will do is land up regretting. Do what makes you feel happy in that moment. And being a father, I can't explain to you, it's beyond overwhelming. It's not just beautiful and all the things you hear about being a parent, but just knowing that you have a life that you're responsible to, accountable to, and the fact that you have that reserve of love that now finally has a channel is the most beautiful feeling in the world.
I mean, that's wonderfully put. And I think that idea that, in your films, that sort of looking for family that people have had. I mean, going back to your first film, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, that girl's looking for a mother. She's the one who wants her father to find a mother, and that you came back to the family as your source of real happiness in that. But I suppose the thing that was also surprising to me was how you were quite frank about sex in the book. Because I know you've had a lot of flack because you haven't said those 3 words. Not I love you. And people have given you a lot of flack for that. And I suppose there's sort of 2 things there. Why do people, it's a bit like I was thinking of a film like, Maine Pyar Kiya, where she's got to say I love you to Salman in English. Why people feel they have to goad you into saying those 3 words.
No, I just feel I don't want my reality to amount to a headline. I don't want it. That's my prerogative. And I've decided that that's how it will remain till I feel the need to say what I need to. Otherwise, samajhdar ko ishara hi kafi hai, and everybody knows exactly what the truth and reality is. And I don't think you need to say it to know who I am, what I stand for, and how I'm placed in the scheme of things. I just don't feel the need to say it out loud because, as I said, my life cannot be a screaming headline. And I refuse for that to happen. I'm a proud father of 2 children. I'm going to raise them with my mother. And everybody knows the reality of my life. So why do I need to say it for me to kind of enhance the reality? It doesn't need to be said.
And I think, I personally feel that, having had many students who've worked on this topic, I see one of them sitting over here in the left, queering Indian cinema. Also this idea that one doesn't have to be explicit, but this idea of putting positive images, of putting complexities about the family and love life on screen has been important, and a move towards that and changing people's attitudes, I think, has been vital. So I know you've had a great deal of appreciation from many of your audience and students of mine, certainly, for that. And, it's very brave in India to actually do this. You know,
Well, I just think that when the journey began, when you're empowered enough to kind of, cross boundaries, to kind of express what you feel through your work. When Dostana was conceived, there was so much criticism about the stereotypical nature. But I was like, it's now become a conversation. Now you know what the reality of it is. Like, there were things that we don't address or don't aware of. And the concept of homosexuality actually is always something that people don't either understand, comprehend, or want to even deal with. The fact that you put it into a mainstream film, even if it's through the route of humor, it at least brings and builds awareness. And people seem to forget there's a scene where Kiran Kher portrays a very traditional Punjabi woman who actually accepts her son. Even though it's not true, she accepts it very, very seriously, she accepts it. And the next day she's almost happy and proud. And I felt that was, to me, an exceptionally brave scene. And we put it there for a reason. But people just don't want to see the good that you do. And then subsequently, whether it's been the short that I directed in Bombay Talkies about repression of your orientation, etc., there have always been efforts made. I've spoken about it. In my own way, I feel like, not because I want to be a flag bearer, not for any other reason, because I believe very strongly that, to each his own, and you're allowed your orientation's a big part of who you are. And I would say this not one, but 377 times, that this is the reality.
And I mean, the power to change things. I remember in an interview we were doing once at BAFTAs with Shah Rukh and Yash Chopra, that somebody mentioned Brokeback Mountain and said to Yashji, would you ever make a gay film? And Yashji said, no, but maybe lesbian theme. And Shah Rukh's face was just, I don't think even Yashji knew the word was a price, something to behold, I think. But one of the other things to go back to that as well, I think one of the things in your films have been these sort of focus on love and the family, and different kinds of love and the family. Even in your first film, Shah Rukh the father, although there are flashbacks, he's got a different role. That there are other kinds of love. I think that was one of the things that comes across so strongly there. And I thought with your Bombay Talkies, that was something quite different. The idea of when you can have a family where there isn't really love.
Which is what the commentary on Bombay Talkies was really about, men and women who lie, in their relationships, because they're trying to conform to society or societal pressures. And it's truly about lies. That was about which I see so many situations around me where I feel like men and women are both in denial of who they are. And you can lie to the world, but my problem is when you lie to yourself. And that is the scariest part of who you are. You can't lie to yourself. You have to know what you are. If you are a gay individual, if you are not inclined to the gender that you're going to marry, you're going to ruin that life. And that is a very selfish thing to do, which is what the communication of Bombay Talkies was. It was really what I was trying to say, that, that to lie is wrong because you ruin a life. And there is absolutely no justifying that. So it was a new kind of a nuclear family that I was talking about, where that does exist, and I see it around me. And of course, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, when I was very young, where the glasses were rose-tinted. And with age, evolution, maturity, you do realize that life is so much beyond the perception of happiness. It's beyond all of that. It's about grassroots gray areas. And we live in the gray. We don't live in the black and the white. We live in the gray. All of us here live in the gray. There's no such thing as a perfect day, and there's no such thing as a dark, deep day either. We live in the gray, and you've got to acknowledge the gray if you want to really see the light.
One of the things that's also come through very much in the book and through your personal life, your love of your friends, the people around you, I think, has been very strong. Your parents and you've always been very close. You're very close to Yashji and Pam, but you talk a bit about your other friends. Adi and Shah Rukh have been very important people in your life, and many other people who perhaps less famous. But Adi and Shah Rukh were sort of where it started for you, really, wasn't it? Making films, and they've remained important in your life. Rani as well. And how in a way now is it when you're working with people that now you're the kind of old guy of cinema, perhaps, in some ways. And, you know, where, you know, in Student of the Year, you present new characters. And I mean, I think Alia Bhatt, to me, is just wonderful. I think she's one of my favourite actresses at the moment. But where are the male staff? Are you going to find us some new, really big male staff now who are under 50?
Well,
I'm asking for a friend. I'm asking for a friend.
Well, I think you're right. There is definitely a paucity of that kind of tremendous talent that, you know, there are few and far between. You have bursts of energy with Ranbir Kapoor and Ranveer Singh, and you know, there are some exceptional young actors doing work. Well, as far as me finding, I never claimed to be a talent hunt. I'm happy to kind of like leverage all the great abundant talent that's available. But yes, we need much more. We need to go beyond ourselves and really find, and it's not about nepotism, which is an overused and completely overabused terminology. It's about really getting the right talent on screen. And I think all endeavors have to be made to find young, new, contemporary, wonderful talents that we can actually put out there in our stories, because we're running around the same 8 people, and I think eventually that well is going to dry up. And when that happens, it's going to be sad, because in any case, cinema is taking a beating with everything else around it. We're soon emerging as the stepchild of entertainment. We used to be the mother of entertainment. And I think we need to go back. And for that, we need tremendous writing, great empowerment of writers, and tremendous talent to portray the writing. So we have to get our act together. Right now, the box office is shook up with Bahubali, but that's just one. It's an abnormally, you know, in the last decade to see this kind of film do these numbers. But we need so much more to happen, so much more to kind of bring to Indian cinema, which is still not happening. And I think we tend to live, especially with Hindi cinema, we tend to live in a bubble sometimes. We tend to not realize what's the real harsh reality around us, which is what I go back to what I started by saying. The delusion is that disease that there's no cure for. So we've got to kind of correct ourselves.
I mean, I remember once when Aadi was doing something and you and I were watching the film Caravan, and you were talking, giving a running commentary on it, and realising then how carefully you watch other films. And I think one of the things in the book you're very modest about is your own ability to really read cinema, watch cinema, before you put it into your own cinema. It's not just, you know, one of the things that really annoys me about, people always talk about Hindi cinema like it's a failed cinema, you know. It could have been great, but it isn't, because it's melodramatic and full of songs and overacting, rather than understanding that's what it's really about. It's, you know, it's the emotion. And so when you were talking about growing up with your mum and listening to the music and the knowledge of music you brought to cinema, because you could never be a big Hindi film director if you didn't get music.
No, I'm obsessed by it. I'm obsessed. I mean, I grew up, as you rightfully said, my mother used to make me listen to all the Mohammad Rafi, Lata Mangeshkar, Asha Bhosle, Kishore Kumar, or Madan Mohan songs, you know, Shankar Jaikishan, and all the greats, you know, who had amazing music. I grew up at a very young age when everyone in my generation was listening to, at that time, the emerging pop culture. I was listening to Lataji's songs, and I was always a bit like, you know, I was watching black and white vintage Raj Kapoor, Bimal Roy, Gurudutt. And at 8 or 9, I discovered the magic of all these movies and this music. And even now, I only listen to Hindi film music. I have nothing else on my iPod, and I'm not proud of it. I'm the only person who thought Purpose Tour was a brand, a clothes brand, because it's available at Selfridges. And I didn't realize it was Justin Bieber's album till he came and I was asked to interview him, and I said I know nothing about him. And I'm not that I'm proud of it, because I have to be connected very deeply to pop culture if I have to remain relevant. So I make a big effort, but it's an effort. You know, I have to listen to, oh my God, Justin Bieber's performing, Coldplay, what are they doing, Ed Sheeran. I know all these things and all these songs because I want to be relevant, because I'm going to be 45 in 5 days, and I need to be relevant. It's very important. There's no such thing as not being relevant. So music is a large part of, that's why the music in our films has always kind of been with the times, because we make sure that our music always connects. And music is such a large and deep part of our cinema. It saddens me that we're letting go of the lip sync song, because, you know, it's now becoming ill illogical, which it is. That celebration aspect in our cinema, unfortunately, is leaving us. But time and again, we're reminded when a film that does exceedingly well at the box office, we're reminded about what we are and why we are different from the rest of the world's cinema. Yes, we have an interval. Yes, we are dramatic, melodramatic at times. Yes, we celebrate every emotion with a song, and we heighten our emotions to a level that might seem implausible. But you know what? The soul that we represent is rare. And it's rare to cinema worldwide, and we've got to be proud of it. We have to own it. We have a different syntax, we have a different tonality, but that's what makes us unique. So the moment we're apologetic about it, it's going to bite us. The moment we accept it and engulf it, we'll walk proud with a new cinema in this world.
Because I think that's one of the things that's been particularly fascinating. I think in the last few years, Indian cinema's been changing so much, and what is becoming popular has often been surprising. I mean, this huge success of Bahubali 2 has been really something unprecedented. And you're still making The Immortals of Malua, aren't you?
No, we don't have the rights just now. No.
Oh.
It was, for various reasons, it wasn't working out.
But I wonder if this is something maybe again feeding from what's going on in South Indian cinema, coming into Hindi cinema. A lot of the other cinemas like Marathi cinema having more realistic films at the moment seem to be impacting on Hindi films. And I suppose for me was a shock when Yash Raj, Dibakar Banerjee went to Yash Raj, the most indie of indie filmmakers, goes to a major studio. I mean, you see perhaps these differences are becoming less between the kinds of Hindi cinema now?
Well, I think that there are all kinds of films should be made, and every kind of genre, if it's made in the right budget and the right approach, has to be made. But I think we've got to go back to larger-than-life cinema, which is what we've stopped doing. Everything has become slightly economically driven. If we were paying the big movie star big money, then we are compromising on its scale and vision because we know we have only that much that we can leverage, etc. We have to go back to abandon. We've lost abandon. The great small film with a beating heart will always have a wonderful audience, and will all be it the Nirja, the Kapoor and Sons, Pink, Piku. These are the films that have garnered love. They'll stop at a point business-wise because that one part of India will engulf it and love it, and there will be the rest that may not envelop it the way the others have. They will love the Bahubali, the Sultans and the Dhooms, but those are tiny. We have so much more. We need to go back to the era where filmmakers took big risks, where I'm not saying put your bank balance at risk or your house at risk or all those dramatic things that we heard of when we were growing up. But we've got to bring abandon back. We've lost abandon. It's kind of been replaced by economic reasons and been replaced by plausibility and logic, whereas actually cinema has always been beyond that. And I think that's what I feel the need to bring back even in my own company, is just abandon. We've lost that abandon.
And you starting your new film yet?
Well, I have a few thoughts, but I'm right now dealing with two of my biggest productions, my children, and they're kind of big budget productions. So when I feel that their release is secure, then I'll get on to the next.
Okay, I'd like to start taking some questions from the audience. Now I think we've got some roving mics are going around, so please don't speak till you've got a mic. I'm not going to select you. I think it's where the mics come that the questions are going to come.
Okay, is this on? I don't know.
I can't hear you.
On. Okay. Hi. You spoke about, you were just talking about abandon and going back to larger than life cinema and not just being motivated by economics, and earlier also you spoke about how when you were starting out your films were more concentrated on love and family, and then you made the film that you made for Bombay Talkies. So I'm just wondering if the idea that you can take risks and go back to film themes that are more driven by I don't know, just risks rather than just driven by economic concerns. I'm just wondering if that comes because you can afford to do it now, because you're already so established that you can afford to take risks, and obviously nothing would happen to the finances.
Actually, to be honest, sorry, can you hear me? To be honest, when you reach a certain position in your career, people think that that is the time that you can take risks. But actually maintaining and holding on to what you've achieved is even more daunting and difficult. So sometimes to take risks at that position is even more scary, because you tend to then feel that that one error is magnified much more than being treated as just one failure in your report card. It actually is magnified to the point that it can actually bring you down several notches. So you have to be very careful to balance a certain amount of risk-taking with your economic concerns and worry about the company. And I have to say that what I do is a blend of commerce and art. So I will want to be very artistic, but I'll have to care about the commercial aspect, because that's what I do. I'm accountable to me, my company, and people who invest in us. So it's always a bit of a crossroad. I don't have the luxury, unfortunately, of just doing something as a whim. I did that in Bombay Talkies because that was the format. It was an omnibus. And, there were 4 of us making films. We were each given 1 crore of rupees to make a film. And it was that kind of an indie space where we could take risks. We're doing a Bombay Talkies too. So I'm going to make another film that might be, again, well, not weird would be an incorrect word, but might be creatively strange.
And you now see the cinema, which is, of course, is quite different, and I think it's grown magnificently, especially the songs, the way the songs are filmed. To your mind, how far over, say, the last 70 years has the Indian audience, about which we have to understand, the majority of them are not terribly literate, they're not terribly intellectual, but this is a great entertainment for them. How far do you feel that the Indian audience in itself, especially this segment I've just mentioned, has matured as viewers?
I think I have a feeling that they are far more evolved than we give them credit for. And I think the failing is more ours than theirs. And I think they've always been very engulfing and very accepting of all kinds of cinema. If you go back to cinema in the 40s, like you mentioned, there were some exceptionally bold themes. There were some progressive themes. There were some beautiful things said, social messaging films that were also entertaining. I think some of us, post the 80s, which I consider the worst phase, the worst decade of Indian cinema, where we succumbed to pots, pans, and kitchen utensils that we started dancing on, and then subsequently, a certain kind of cinema took over. I think was creative laziness. There was just too much dependency on stardom. We lost content, we lost bravery, and we continue to, which is what I just said to Rachel right towards the end. We need to bring that abandon back, and I think it's not the audience's fault at all, it's ours. There is a certain level of delusion and selfishness that the industry has as a whole, and I think we need to understand that everyone out there is much more prepared for things. We're just not prepared to take those chances.
Would you feel that the Abu trilogy has a bigger audience now, or something like those?
The sorry?
Abu trilogy,
The
all the Jalsa have.
No. I'm not sure about whether that was going to have a large audience at all, because, that is a different kind of syntax. But yes, there are different stories to tell.
I got to visit Wadsden Manor a few months ago.
Hi.
Sorry. I got to visit Wadsden Manor a few months ago, where you shot Shah Rukh's entry scene in K3G, and I was a bit disappointed that the Bachchans weren't doing a puja inside when I walked through the door. I wanted to ask you about...
Yeah, did you realize that there were no cars parked outside? In that big Diwali celebration inside, there was not a single car outside. And we don't know where they came in from. Must have taken a long while to get to Waddesdon Mansion, because we put cars outside, and I was like, it's ruining the frame, remove them. We did strange things then. Yeah, sorry.
I wanted to ask you about Fawad Khan's casting process in Kapoor and Sons. I heard that you had gone through several actors before you settled on that, and what that incident leads to in terms of the role of Pakistani artists in Indian cinema?
Well, as you know, it's been a turbulent ride, especially with the release of Ae Dil Hai Mushkil and everything that the film went through. Fawad Khan is an exceptional artist, and he was very brave to take on that part. 6 leading actors in Hindi cinema refused the part, all claiming different other excuses. No one said why they were. They were just, it was either the part wasn't good enough or the script wasn't good enough. None of them did it. And eventually a conversation between me and Fawad, and he read the script, called me back immediately in 2 days and said that he'd like to do that part, and the project fell into place. What do I say? It's very sad that that we can't leverage tremendous talent, and I do believe talent is beyond boundaries. But that's the status, and that's how we have to conform to it.
That was part of my question. Yes, thank you very much. You've been incredibly articulate, and I certainly enjoyed your 377 reasons you've put across of being a film director. You've slightly addressed my question, which was around the use of Pakistani artists in India. And I know the controversy that you went through over that film. So my question, I suppose I'm going to broaden it out because you've touched on it, is can you say something about the current political environment for filmmakers and people in media under Modi? Do you feel that there's a shrinking space around talking about some of the issues that you've discussed? You've talked about gay love, but there are a whole range of other issues around human rights that we're seeing in the media, documentary filmmakers and commercial mainstream feeling quite threatened. And so the question is around, and I suppose it's slightly awkward for you to answer, but what sort of political pressure were you put under over those decisions around the Pakistani actors last year? Because I think it sent a very big shockwave through the community, and you're seen as very much, and I'm saying this very sympathetically, you're seen very much as a champion of causes. So it was very disappointing that you couldn't take up that cause, but maybe it was around you don't want to spend your life dealing with FRIs.
Well, it was, I have to say it was a tough time. It was very difficult for me. In fact, when I had to put out a video, even claiming my nationalism and my feeling of patriotism towards my country, it was sad that I had to kind of put it out there. And I almost felt that there was an invisible gun on my head. What do I say? I'm a filmmaker and I'll do my best. I can tell stories. I can do my best through my creativity. But if it's curbed at every given point of time, it's going to make me worry. And it's going to make me worried to take chances and take steps that could be detrimental to me, my company, and my fraternity. So yes, it was very sad what happened. It will continue to be sad what happened. And when you say that we're champions of our cause, well, unfortunately, we're restricted champions. We just actually can tell our stories, but we don't have the ability to combat every circumstance. And I hope and pray that in time that, you know, the artist is liberated and is beyond boundaries and beyond any kind of pressures. I know that we as filmmakers tend to not take chances because we're worried about the ramifications, be it at a authority level or even at a level of like any kind of governance. So it's really difficult. Times are not easy, and for all of us, you know, we're all in this together. And nobody, if you ask any person of my fraternity, everyone will share their empathy and their compassion. But unfortunately, circumstances are beyond us.
Hi, Karan. I want to tell you I love you on your talk show, and please don't stop doing that. And my question is around the title of the book. Like, were you always pivoted on this title, or you came up with it while you were writing the book? How did it named Unsuitable Boy?
Well, it's actually a tongue-in-cheek a derivative of Suitable Boy, really, and it's really like I mean, I'm not saying that I feel I'm unsuitable, but it was more like a tongue-in-cheek approach, and I felt it went with the narrative, and we just came upon it, and everyone really liked it, and it was suitably titled An Unsuitable Boy.
Thank you.
Hello, Karan. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Not as a director, but as a writer. Was it hard for you to write your autobiography? And have you used any service of ghostwriter? And how would you encourage a writer who is carrying a story inside him?
How would you encourage a writer who's carrying what inside him?
A story.
Stories inside him.
Yes.
Well, there was no ghostwriter. Poonam Saxena and me wrote the book together. There was no question of a ghostwriter because it was very simple, the narrative. It was my life, so it didn't need any kind of exceptional flowery vocabulary or any kind of great. It was just about my personal feelings. And you said, what if you were a writer? How would you platform your idea?
Yes.
Well, put it out there. There's so many platforms. Just don't not. Writing is a discipline, and no matter how many times you write and how many times you fail, you've got to kind of resurrect yourself and come back again to the page. That's what I believe in. I think that you have a story to tell, tell it. Today there are, fortunately, the internet or various platforms give you the space and opportunity to express yourself, and you can do that much without even a publisher at times. So of course, and if your content is great, it will get picked up. But you've got to go out there and put yourself out there. That's the only way.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Karan. Right here.
Hi.
Actually, the lady next to me, she asked the question why it's called An Unsuitable Boy, and I have the book next to me. So you've already answered that. The mic is in my hand, so I thought I'll just let you know that I have the book. And it's very suitably justified. And I think the gentleman in front of me wants to ask the next question, so I'll hand over to you.
First of all, I really wanted to thank you for Kapoor and Sons. When my partner and I watched it, we just cried through the entire movie because Fawad Khan's character is just the story of our lives almost. So just touched me in such a powerful way. Thank you so much for that. I had a question actually about your directing a lot of and producing a lot of films that have gay characters in them. I think I'd also spoken to Apurva Srani about this whole dialogue that he'd had with you about Dostana and stuff like that. But people in the ostensible gay community have said things about you having created visibility. So Shang Merchant, for example, talks about it in his book, and he says that you've created so much visibility for gay characters. But I wanted to know what you would say about the kind of plethora of gay characters that have started appearing post the lots of work that you've done, and would you say, in a sense, that you have grounded or opened up that space actually, because people tend to disparage that, but I think that that's a very important role. So would you take credit for opening up that space?
I don't want to take credit for anything. I just did what I felt was honest, was relevant, and what came organically to me or as a production house. I was never resistant to it because I thought that it was integral for me to kind of put this kind of content out there and tell these stories. So Kapoor and Sons, it was sad that there were so many actors that didn't want to do it, but we still went on and on and on till we got the film made. And every other film that you speak of, we're not, as I said, we're not flag bearers of a movement. We're trying to kind of be as honest to ourselves and do our best for the human cause of it. And I believe it on a humanitarian level. More than anything else, I believe that who you are, who your orientation is a large part of your existence. And if you're denied that reality, then it's really sad and unfortunate. And in my capacity, whatever I can do, I will do. I don't want to be an activist. I don't want to write blogs. I don't want to vent. And I certainly don't want to respond to people who've said things about me through their blogs. And because I think that everyone here, is so angry all the time that I think that you don't think straight. And you have to think straight if you have to act on an issue. And that's what I've done as a filmmaking production house and as an individual.
Hi, Karan. You get the syntax of Indian cinema as well as art tonality, as you say, very well. And with the Ae Dil Hai Mushkil, you are going into another direction of being more open, respecting that syntax. So, given your age, you're only 45, as you said, there are decades ahead where you can creatively impact Indian cinema. So what's next for Karan Johar?
I don't know. I wish I had the answer to that question. It's always been like my state of mind that's dictated what I've made next. I don't know. I'm a bit soppy these days because of my babies. So I hope that doesn't translate into anything that I do next. But I'm also externally looking at it, and I feel like Indian cinema needs a wake-up call. And I hope that we're all, since we've been a big part of this industry, and I think that we are all, as a community, we need to kind of wake up that, times are different. There are too many distractions. distractions around cinema, and we need to bring people back into cinema halls. And for that, we need to be true to what Indian cinema truly is, like we spoke about. So yes, I think we're in the stage of being that wake-up call. And I think I'm in that zone myself. So I feel like what I do next is very integral. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a beat before I take that call.
Adab, Karan ji, I just want to say I'm a massive fan of yours and your father's. I've watched every single film of yours.
Thank you.
But I was saddened just by you not actually coming out. When I read the excerpts from your book, and I know you visited New York more than 50 times, and that has special memories for you. I'm not going to go into the details of it. There was a big furore in India and with the LGBT community across the world. I'm a social activist, a gay LGBT activist. I'm only a few years younger than you. You were my muse growing up. My mother's from India, so you were my muse growing up. I always knew about your orientation, like you said. I watched Lift Karade when you helped people from all different walks, and Coffee with Karan, and all your films. But I was deeply saddened with you from the film fraternity, the metropolitan elite. And I know that you have that connection with the grassroots in India, with your work you do, cannot come out. Then what hope is there? I mean, with the reversal of the actual penal code, the British Board, the 1860 penal code, with the reversal of gay acts now in India, what hope do we have? I mean, you were the hope of many people. And I'm not asking you to be a flag bearer. I'm not asking you to be an activist. But I'm saying, if you can't, then what hope is there?
I feel you shouldn't be sad at all. You must not be sad. You seem very shattered. I just want to say, I just want to tell you that there are various, when you say coming out, there are various stages to that. And it's what you draw from what I've said and what I continue to say. It's, as I said, 3 words don't mean anything. The reality of what I do and what I've done in cinema or through my acts should actually be definitive enough for you to be empowered, if at all you're looking and seeking for empowerment through what I do. And I'm very happy. Thank you so much for actually considering me a big part of your journey. But whatever I may have done and said is already evident enough. And as I said, that it's all out there. It's you coming out is a technicality that you're talking about. You're just talking about being literal about things. But everything else I've done in my life is pretty much expressed who I am. And you have to draw from that. And that's enough inspiration for you to draw from. I have. Isse zyada if I talk about it, then I'll only be talking about this. There is so much else. There's so much else to talk about.
Hi. Yo. It's my last question, yeah. So you spoke about how you really try to be relevant, and I'm really curious as to what your focus group is to try to be relevant, because sometimes I watch your film, and I understand you have a larger theme running, but then when I saw Air Dil Hai Mushkil, and you have Ranbir Kapoor going, yeah, let's get a private jet and go, and then he reaches Paris and he says, wait, I don't have money for a room. So, that's not relevant enough, if I can say so. So I'm just wondering, is that a different kind of elite group that you sit with? Let's see what's relevant in the rich people today. So... I'm sorry.
When I said, no, don't worry, you're actually completely right. There's actually nothing. It's just that I have an issue about representation of some of the characters and some of the aesthetics I give them. When I mean relevance, I mean tonality, about just understanding what the beats of an audience would want in a certain time. There was a logic that was actually removed on the edit table, which would have described the 50-50 and etc. about what they were saying, and why Ranbir actually that entire logic made it seem like it was really silly of him to say what he did, because there was a scene because of length we removed. And if you go back to the video feature, if you go back to the DVD and the edited scene, if at all you care, there's a scene there that actually will explain why I said, but there's no justifying that he needn't have been that wealthy to tell the story. I just like rich people on screen, and I like good-looking clothes, and I'm unapologetic and unabashed about it, and I don't seek any logic in that. I like to show that kind of wealth on screen. I think it makes me feel very happy that he was sitting in a private jet because I don't own one, or live in a mansion because I don't live in one, and just have a great time because I don't, at all points of time I'm having a great time. So I live vicariously through my characters, and there is no reason, there's no logic, and there's absolutely no reason for any of those things to happen, but you know what, I love it. And I don't care. I don't care what anyone has to say, because So many people say, you make films about first world problems. I'm like, yeah, yaar, अमीर लोगों के का दिल नहीं होता क्या? उनका दिल नहीं टूटता. They don't go through worries and problems. You don't have to kind of show suffering only to show any kind of like. I'm like, I like the look of this. I want my house to look unnaturally large. I want them to wear clothes that they should not be able to afford, and that's what I love, and that's what I've raised my cinema to be. And yet sometimes, because I'm Gemini and you get two for the price of one, I'll go through that. You'll go through that one beat where I suddenly want to become natural and real on you. So just so they'll deal with my schizophrenia a little bit, you know, because I tend to be bipolar with my choices.
Thank you once again, Rachel Dwyer and Karan Johar.